AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guests today are Adam Smith, who is the VP of Analytics and Data Science at Sitely, and we also have Adam Katz, who is the Chief Revenue Officer and General Manager at Sitely. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Bit of a unique one where we're doing a double interview, but I think it's important to set the context as to why, and it'll become clearer as the interview goes on. We originally reached out to Adam Katz, who's the Chief Revenue Officer for Sitely, and Adam had suggested that we do a joint interview because of how unique the environment is at Sitely with the combination of data science at the core of the business. So we'll get into that in a minute, but let's start with a quick overview of each of your own backgrounds. So start with Adam Katz. If you wouldn't mind, give us a quick background of yourself, where you got started in tech, what your journey has been taking us up to where you are today. And then Adam Smith, if you can follow suit after that, it would be great.
Yeah, of course. So I'll keep it brief. I've been in marketing, technology, advertising, and those style businesses for the past 13 years now. In terms of how, I think the most significant thing to talk about was my experience prior to Sitely and then coming to Sitely. So prior to Sitely, I was at a company called Nomi that was connecting the online and the offline worlds through some really cool technology. And the original first investor in Nomi was also the original investor in Sitely. And he approached me to be an advisor to the company back in late 2014, not knowing that they were trying to convince me to come to Sitely and open our New York office and start a big part of the company. So I got to Sitely through being an advisor originally and then coming into the company. So it's been a great run, and I'm coming up on 6.5 years, and it's been the best experience of my career so far.
Amazing. And we'll jump into some of the specifics about your role in a little bit. But Adam, if you wouldn't mind, give it a quick background of yourself.
I've served in data science roles for about 8 years and started my career actually in fraud analytics. Started building credit and fraud models for banks. Eventually, I moved on to social media analytics and marketing. Joined Sitely about 2.5 years ago and have been focused ever since on providing some pretty cool machine learning solutions for the product that we're looking to build. I've built my career primarily on finding practical business solutions using machine. And that's my passion and what I really enjoy doing. And I found a lot of interesting things to tackle here at Sitely.
Excellent. Thank you guys for that. Adam Katz, if we can start with yourself by giving us and the audience an overview of Sitely as a business, what you guys do, what the mission of the organization is, and then what's unique about what you do, because it truly is a bit of an anomaly for what we're used to hearing about. And then we can go into your role as the Chief Revenue Officer, and that will lead nicely then into what Adam and his team does.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sitely's on a big mission where what we're trying to do is help brands be able to reach their consumer in a very unique way, but doing it through the lens of what their mentality is. So basically, about 16, 17 months ago, unfortunately, when Kobe Bryant died, he had practiced something called the Mamba mentality that had helped him get from where he was in his career to where he got to by the time he unfortunately died, being #GirlTad, revered by women's basketball, looked at as an Oscar winner, like things that his life was just incredible. And when he was down, he established this thing called the Mamba mentality that he lived by, which was a way that he was going to always be. It was a way to be consistent, a way to go to market, a way to know what he wanted to do, a way of helping himself with speed and how to be able to capitalize on those things. And you see a lot of what he taught people still in the NBA today, like a player on the Knicks, Julius Randle, still goes to high school gyms before games to practice when he goes on the road because of things that Kobe taught him. So the Kobe's Mamba mentality took on a life of its own. And I was thinking a lot about this concept. And Sightly was playing on the biggest platforms in the world like YouTube, TikTok, and all these platforms that scale really fast. And most brands look at those platforms only through the lens of risk and not through the lens of opportunity. So I was thinking about how could we help a brand establish their mentality with this quick changing world of culture and emotional change and mission-based marketing and all these different outcomes now that brands and people are looking at with the social justice movements and what happened with COVID and all the different speed at which the world is moving today. And we wanted to think about how to be able to help brands solve with the way they think and be able to move as fast as they would want to in market. So that's where the brand mentality platform took shape. And what the brand mentality platform is built to do is enable a brand to have their opinion on what a piece of content may be. Is the WWE scripted entertainment? Is it a sport? Is it? And what do you actually think that is? And we want to give back control to brands to determine what they believe pieces of content is. We want to give control back to brands to be able to figure out what they care about as an aspirational brand or what they care about the type of competitors that they want to be able to go after. But more importantly, we want to give them the ability then after that they're able to give those kind of inputs to react really fast to what's going on in this ever-changing fast. So what the platform does is allow them to put in what they care about in all these different types of scenarios and all these different ways that they would want to react. And we connect this brand profile to what's going on in the world. And we run it through our models to be able to determine in real time what pieces of information that are going on in the world mean to a brand and allow them to react to execute on the platforms that we sit on. So it's bringing together what a brand's values are, what they believe about themselves, what's going on in the world, and then the ability to connect. So a good example to think about with Sightly is we're a big believer in women being in leadership, right? So one of the aspirational brands, the Sightly's brand, is Bumble. And we're not a dating app, but the Bumble CEO is one of the great women leaders of all time. So if Sightly knows that something happens for the Bumble CEO, we want to be able to pick that up, determine it in real time that it matters to us, and be able to optimize into her content on different channels like YouTube or TikTok and things like that. So that's what Sightly's solving, is a big mission, helping brands be consistent, be able to capitalize on opportunity when it makes sense, be able to understand how they see and how they feel to real world views. And I'll get into a bunch of other use cases throughout the call, but it's become a very unique thing that we're doing in market.
We've had many different ad tech and media companies on the show in the past, but what you guys are doing is really breaking new ground. And you've given us the what, you've told us the why behind it. And I think it's a nice segue into Adam Smith is the how. What's happening behind the scenes? What role does AI and data science play in giving these customers such an accurate insight into what matters?
I think data science and AI really play a central role in a lot of the things that we are trying to achieve with brand mentality, starting with really understanding what this problem looks like from the client perspective, right? The most complicated part of this is really understanding how a brand sees the world. So it starts with that interview with the client to capture exactly how they see the world, how they see certain situations and scenarios in the world, and being able to map those responses to things that we can use from a machine learning perspective that would match up with real world events. So the first part of that, I think it's a good thing to think about even from any data science problem perspective, is really understanding what the problem looks like from the client perspective. The other major piece of this is we have a system that can analyze real world events, news stories, social media moments, and viral trends at all times, which gives us a really rich data set to work with in order to connect client opinions and client scenarios to in real time. So you start with really understanding the problem from the client perspective, and you extend that into this real-time data feed. And all of those connections are made through our ability to understand and match to that client blueprint through machine learning. We're using some really big, powerful language models to do that, and it's a really cool process. The final piece that, of course, Adam mentioned a little bit is connecting that to actual pieces of content in the media space. We do that by deep contextual understanding through machine learning as well.
Thank you for that. So I think what would be beneficial now is if we could look at the life cycle of maybe an example project that you think would really speak to the impact. And Adam Katz, if you can talk about the business objective, and then Adam Smith, you come in and talk about the stages of development, and then we can circle back on the impact. And I think this will be a great way to showcase how data science is at the core of what Sightly does at all stages of the conversation, which is quite unique in this space.
JP, it's a great question. Ultimately, before I even get into it, what's funny is when we first started doing this, obviously, this JP from interviewing a lot of people and watching platforms get built, you do a lot of these things manually and try to learn the process before you even sometimes build the machine. So what happened was we've people in our company that have tried to do this without the machine learning and the AI that was being built and the natural language processing, when we were first doing it, were drowning and pleading for mercy. So it's impossible to do this without tech. So I think just making that very clear, it's like we watched that happen throughout the early on stages. And then in terms of use cases and things that have been really cool, they happen every single second of every day. Like people, for example, a pizza brand wants to lean into National Pizza Day. Our technology picked that up. You have the Megan Rapinoe, who just became the face of Victoria's Secret. And when you think about it, that whole scenario has so many different subjects in one round. You have the fact that she's now taking over as the face. She's married to Sue Bird. She's the first person to kneel. But then on top of that, a lot of articles came out that she tweeted something negatively about Asians back in 2011. So our platform has the ability to separate the whole conversation that's going on so that you're only leaning into the conversation that matters to you. Then on top of that, you look at any influencer in the world, Kim Kardashian, LeBron James, and these people have so many things going on every single second of every day. So being able to separate the good with the bad, the things that you want to lean into versus not, are crucial case studies that come up every day. On top of that, think about the change in people and the change in perception that happens all the time. We had, for example, Chrissy Teigen in our brand mentality. We had her in our brand mentality because of the unfortunate miscarriage that she went through and the fact that she spoke out on that. Right now, she's being cornered as a bully on social media. So our mentality changed and we took her off of our brand mentality. So it's every day, there's just new use cases at all times. We've had auto brands that have come to us and said, we're not releasing new types of cars this year. We're staying consistent. And our competitors are releasing all these new cars. Can you pick up when those get released and make sure that you can lean into those moments? And we're like, of course, just enter your competitors. Our NLP picks it up, connects it back to the data that we're looking at in the world and is able to react. So JP, I can name brands, I can name situations, but they're happening every single day. And what's really cool is they're happening locally, they're happening nationally, and being able to decipher and make those decisions because brands have made the decision up front what they would want to do. So like I could go on, but there's going to be a new one every single day.
Yeah, and you've done a really good job of framing just frequent and multifaceted this can be, which leads nicely into asking my next question for Adam Smith. You've got some complex problems that you're trying to solve with you and your team with the flux of real-time data and all the different data streams. Can you give us some insight into what makes it all tick? So what's the current makeup of the team, mix of engineers, analytics, data science, and a typical day in the life, a project that you and your group are working on to make all of this happen?
Let me describe that a little bit through a compare and contrast. A typical brand safety solution, or a suitability solution in this case, would look at a situation like Chrissy Teigen being outed on social media as a bully, and they would probably look at that as an opportunity to block Chrissy Teigen as a person because there's negative news being reported about her at this point in time. But that's a pretty big move and a pretty bold move to make, given that there's a lot of facets to that story. So it is a big problem. You have to really get a little bit deeper into it in order to understand what exactly to do. And then each client, each advertiser is going to have a different opinion on exactly how they want to react to different facets of that story as well. So blanket blocking an individual is never the right move. You have to get a little bit deeper into the story. So in order to do that, you have to start with understanding what's the client's worldview? What does the advertiser look at the world? If they're interested in Chrissy Teigen as an influencer, but they are also interested in avoiding sensitive social issues on social media, then we have to be able to parse those two things in tandem with one another and really understand when we see events that come through in real time that relate to Chrissy Teigen as an influencer, but also relate to sensitive social issues on social media, what's the decision going to be for this particular client? So if I have a client that wants to lean in on Chrissy Teigen and even lean in further if it's a sensitive social issue because they just really believe her to be this aspirational influencer, then the task for the data science team and the task for our engineers is to keep this data feed open so that we can monitor for situations in the world that relate to sensitive social issues and an aspirational influencer that's named by the brand, and be able to locate content and locate platforms that are going to target that kind of content and activate on it automatically. So from a engineering perspective, it's keeping that data feed going at all times and being able to pull out the relevant pieces of content that can help us get context around real world events and moments, locating pieces of inventory that relate to those moments. And from the data science perspective, it's making all of those connections in real time and making sure that we do that on a really deep level and that we can separate the individual from the event, because I think that's the nuance that our clients are really looking for.
Adam, taking the overall projects that you've just described, can you give us some insight now into the dynamics of the team, what it's like to be a part of it, how you guys have gone about being so successful while sustaining growth, and what makes it a fun place to work if you're a data scientist or data engineer?
Yeah, we have a pretty flat organizational structure. It's a small team of data scientists, but they are all really good at being able to unpack a project from start to finish. We have a really transparent culture. It's necessary when you're doing this kind of work, when you're talking about really interesting situations in the real world with clients and getting their honest, unfiltered opinion on it. It reinforces that culture of transparency within the team as well. We're a very collaborative team. We're always in touch with one another about ideas and ways to improve on our ability to sense things that are going on in the world and to connect them better with client opinions. And we collaborate on those types of projects all the time.
So then going full circle, bringing it back to the point which you mentioned, Adam Katz, in the intro about the unique nature of where data science sits in the organization. Can you give us some insight into why that's so critical and how you're helping your customers change the view of AI engagement being integral at all areas of the business?
I think it's been a journey for me and a learning experience for me. I started as one of those people that wasn't as big a believer in data science. It's easy to know how to figure things out when you come from a place that most people came from and that you've converted yourself. So what happened was when we were starting to build out our data science practice at Sightly, my suggestion was to keep them very close to the business side of the company. So somehow, because of that, the data science team ended up reporting to me, and I run revenue and I'm the general manager of the company. So it's a very unique setup that the head of revenue would be the manager for the data science team. So what ended up happening was, instead of taking the approach that most people would take when they manage a team, I went the opposite route, where I took the approach that I don't know data science the way data scientists do. Obviously, it's pretty simple logic, but that was my original thesis. But I thought to myself, if I could get data science teams who are typically in the back house of companies to come to client meetings, be engaged with the sales team, be engaged with our account management team and all the client-facing teams, that ideas would flourish in a much quicker, smarter way. And also then when things get built as companies, a lot of the time the business side doesn't like what's built because their input wasn't involved. So I figured it would just be a natural way that would happen. And thank God it did. And Adam Smith and I have fostered a phenomenal relationship. And through that phenomenal relationship, I've learned a lot about data science. He could tell you I could talk about all the words and all the math and all the different things, but I took the time to learn from him. And they took the time to learn that sales and revenue and business things are not just done for no reason. And that integration has proved to be extremely fruitful, right? And everyone that we've ever hired at data science is still at the company. And on top of that, I think one of the coolest things is you have the product and engineering organization now, because of the relationship between business and data science, getting fully integrated as well. And you're going to see us be able to move so much faster, because what happens is, when you're out there in the market and you're selling and you're talking to clients and they're integrated at the same time, like I said, how much faster are you going to be able to build product and build cool solutions? So I think ultimately data science is the center of pretty much everything we've tried to build at Sightly. But ultimately, if we didn't integrate a guy like Adam into those conversations up front, I don't think we'd be coming up with as many cool ideas as we had. Having a concept and getting to a place where it's a real product is a very different.
Yeah, and just to add to that, from doing so many podcasts and listening to the feedback from so many business leaders, one of the main reasons for such a high project failure rate within data science is the disconnect between front office, middle office, and the data team, which you guys have obviously worked to counter, and speaks to why you're being so successful. Final question from me then, and I think it'd be good to get both your input on it. When you look ahead at what you guys have already been able to accomplish and what the possibilities are for future opportunities, what are you most excited about, and what's the end goal for Sightly?
I'd love to see the team grow. I'd love to see more data scientists come on board and for us to really be able to foster a collaborative team environment that's connected to that front end of the business. We're able to iterate so much faster because we get that direct client feedback. And I think it's going to be really great in the future being able to incorporate more of that client feedback to do things that nobody's been able to automate before in this industry. So utopia, or end goal for me, looks like a larger, highly collaborative team that can execute quickly and can really utilize the latest and greatest in data science and machine learning to solve really cool problems.
So utopia for me is getting all brands to be able to put their mentality out there at scale. So what that ultimately means is that people are willing to have much tougher conversations with each other up front than they ever have before, so that they could actually move fast when things happen. Like, for example, last year when George Floyd died, which was horrible, everybody was blocking all Black-owned media sites because they were just blanket blocking the word George Floyd. But if people actually had conversations with each other about what they believed with everything that was going on there, that wouldn't have happened. So the utopia for me is that brands become consistent. They actually start to sit down and talk about these things. You have Nike saying that they're going to be incentivizing their leadership group based on all new different metrics than ever before. So if that's true, and that's where the world's going, and mission-based marketing and all these new metrics are populating that we have our center of the pulse on, then utopia is going to be the brands become consistent. They actually have these tough conversations before they go to market, and they actually stay the course when they make those decisions. And ultimately, my belief is if they do that, they're going to end up with better results anyway. Like when you think about it, one of our biggest wins that's out there in market that we're allowed to speak about is with Vita Coco. We were working with them, and they put a massive influencer in our platform as somebody that they care about. And then on top of that, they put in their belief on a situation and how they would want to react. And because of that, we were able to pick up that situation and react, and their results were staggering. But their results went away in 48 hours. So if they were sitting there without those decisions up front, like other customers, they'd be 100 hours behind when the moment's over. So I'm hoping that brands can have these tough conversations with each other, understand that the world's changing, consumers are looking at things very differently than ever before, and that they have to be open-minded to the changes that are happening. And what if they don't believe in the changes, then be consistent and you're going to get better results. So I think consistency, people love that, right? If you're always up and down, how frustrating is it being friends with one of those people? So I think that consistency is going to help brands. It's going to allow them to be a lot bigger risk takers than they think they can be. And then on top of that, it's going to help them drive better.
Guys, thank you both so much for coming on today and talking to us. It was a very enjoyable conversation. I think it was great to hear about the unique nature of how you work together from front office to data science at the core. What you're doing at Sightly is truly unique. Sounds very exciting, and I'm glad we've been able to share the mission with our audience. So thank you both again.
JP, thanks for having us.
You're the man.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. For more information, contact mark@alldus.com. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.